everybody. I'm Dr. Lisa Olszewski. Welcome back to the summit. It's so great to have you here. And I'm really excited about our guest today. This is a name that you all know very well from the keto world. And we are going to deep dive into some of the science and the information that we all need to know as to how our bodies work. But we're going to go into the science of diabetes. And then we're also going to deep dive into carnivore, because that's a big thing that's been a topic over the course of the last few years. And this man knows tons of information on it. So you're definitely going to want to take a look at it on whether or not you want to even up-level your health even more. So over here to my side is Craig Emmerich. I'm hoping I'm saying your last name right. I should have asked you that before we even started. With the last name like Olszewski, I always slaughter everybody else's, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, it's K at the end, Emmerich.
Emmerich. Okay.
Yeah.
So Craig has a really interesting background. He's actually an engineer.
Yeah.
So this is why we're going to talk science. So Craig, let's tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. They probably know my wife more than me. Maria's written lots of books, and I've been kind of the guy behind the scenes for a lot of years, helping get the nutritional info for her books and keeping her blog running, and the kind of the IT guy in the background, if you will. And so when I say that, just for people's frame of reference, we're talking 20 years ago when Maria started doing this.
Before, when you would have said keto 20 years ago, people would have been like, "Oh, that's Atkins."
People thought we were crazy. Then I was doing that, and I was still an electrical engineer. So I had my job. I was a product manager, working actually in healthcare, doing some software imaging for CT and PET scan software for medical imaging. And I was a product manager there, but I was doing this on the side, helping Maria. And it just got to a point where with her, she started to publish books and get clients, and this starts to grow a bit, maybe about 12, 14 years ago. And I came on board as well. It took me a little longer. It seems like a lot of situations where the wife gets on board, takes the guy a little longer to come along. Cause like me, I brewed my own beer and, got that German background. I was like, okay, took me a little longer to come around, but maybe 5 years down the road, probably 15 years ago now, I also just kind of changed because I just started feeling better whenever I ate her food. So I'm like, I want to feel this way all the time. So I came along, but then about 10, 12 years ago, it got to the point where she had enough business, she had enough clients, she had enough books out that were starting to gain traction. It just made a lot of sense for me to step away from my job and dedicate my time to this, because I also had a passion for helping people. And so I just started diving into it 100% as well. Left my job in the, cubicle world and worked from home. And we then adopted our kids, and I became the homeschool teacher as well. And it's kind of wearing a couple different hats, but over the last 10 years, I just, engineering is kind of you get kind of a work mentality as an engineer, so like electrical engineering. It moves so fast that if you don't keep up on the latest science of what's going on in different technologies, in 6 months you're out of date. So you get that mentality of I've got to learn. And so I did that in health, and that's what I've been doing the last 10, 12 years. And as a result, gained a lot of knowledge about how our bodies work, and we put that into our keto book that we co-authored a couple years ago.
Yeah, and those, I'm sure they probably already listened to Maria's story from the summit, but she had her own health struggle. And so that's, I think, so often how so many of us kind of worked our way into eating a low carb, high fat diet. But like you had just said, you started eating her foods and realized that you were feeling better. And so I think that's one of the things. A lot of times people will look at keto for a short-term weight loss thing, but as we all talk about and we advocate here, it's actually a lifestyle. And so that's what I want to talk about today a little bit, but why is low carb so beneficial for us? And then we'll even get into the carnivore portion. But let's talk diabetes, because we understand what's going on, especially in the United States, and we're seeing it throughout the world as well. But we now have little kids that are being diagnosed diabetic, and it's not something that you catch. It's something, if they ate their way into it. I should just say juvenile diabetes is a whole nother thing. But the adult onset diabetes, we don't even call it adult onset anymore because so many young children, just because of the way they've been taught to eat. So
Yeah.
your whole family is keto. I know that.
Yep.
So let's talk about the science of diabetes, exactly what that is, and let's bust through those misconceptions that it's just something we're going to end up with, or if your parents were diagnosed with diabetes in their 40s or 50s, that you're just destined for it, because that's absolutely, you and I both know it's not the truth. So let's talk a little bit about the science.
So from the most basic level, the primary cause of type 2 diabetes is an overstuffing of your adipose tissue. So let's break that down and talk about what that is. Adipose tissue are the cells where you store fat. And these cells, they can get, as you stuff more fat in them, they get bigger and bigger. And there's kind of a physiology that, we don't totally understand yet about how many adipose cells. And we've always heard that if you're bigger as a child, you'll have more fat cells as you get older. And if you don't have a lot of fat cells when you're young, and maybe there's a genetic component of how many fat cells you actually have that you can store fat into. So there's kind of that whole angle of it. But at the end of the day, when we become adults, we have more or less a set number of fat cells, and you can stuff those in more or less and get more body fat or less body fat, but the number of cells doesn't change that much for whatever the reason is. And so what happens is the cells you do have, as you're stuffing them, and you get this energy toxicity state where you're just consuming too much, and we can talk a little bit about oxidative priority and how the body prioritizes fuels, and if you're taking in fuels with higher priority, it's going to store away the other fuels because it's got to deal with these first. Fat is the last one because it's theoretically you have the most storage for it. So it gets stored away. If you have lots of carbs coming in the diet, it just keeps storing away the fat because it's got to deal with the carbs. But anyway, when those fat cells get stuffed, at some point they're going to say, I've had enough. I can't stuff any more fat in this cell. So the cell becomes insulin resistant. It rejects insulin to say, don't put any more fat in me. Well, what happens when a lot of these cells have that state? So you keep stuffing fat, trying to stuff fat in. The fat cells keep saying, I've had enough. I can't take anymore. Blood triglyceride levels go up because there's no place to put the fat. Fat starts to accumulate in your liver and your pancreas and in different organs. And that becomes metabolic syndrome. That's your body turning into a type 2 diabetic. And it's primarily because of that overstuffing. And the key here is, this is how you can have somebody who's 110 pounds and type 2 diabetic, because they don't have that many fat cells, but they're all stuffed and inflamed.
That's huge. That's a huge, huge, huge key, because it is so often where people, and I don't think that people understand the concept of how much sugar is even in their energy drinks or something like that, and how much sugar your body can go into a diabetic coma with. And so that's the fact of insulin. Just there's such a cascade when we understand the innate of our body and how it reacts to everything that we're giving it. It's reacting perfectly. And so if you put yourself into that situation, there is a way that you can get out of that. So how are some of the ways that you guys coach clients, et cetera, on when they are walking and facing that situation?
Yeah, I started out our keto book by talking about just that. A lot of healthcare professionals will look at the body as kind of a flawed machine, right? Genetics or whatever. There's nothing you can do about it. This is just the way your body is. We can throw some prescriptions at it to try to mask the symptoms, but you can't fix the body because it's like broken. It's a genetic issue. And I look at it as, for the most part, I mean, there are true genetic issues where, like, you just simply don't metabolize fat, or you don't, and these are really chronic conditions. But in general, the body's doing what it's supposed to do. And if you give it the right inputs, it's going to do the right thing with them. The problem is when you give it the wrong inputs, the body is like, this is not right. I can't deal with it. And that's why I did this disease tree in the beginning of the book of, your body is like this tree, and it's got all these inputs, and the inputs are, obviously nutrition's a huge one, but sunlight, how much exercise you get, how much sleep you get, how much, not smoking, and all these are inputs. And what are the outputs? If these inputs get wrong, metabolic disorder, cancer, disease, these things are primarily due to bad inputs to the system.
Mhm.
And if you change the inputs, you can change the outputs. So an
Absolutely.
engineering look at it.
It's so true, right? I was also, my background was all about engineering, and then I decided at the last minute I was going to actually become a chiropractor, so I went pre-med. So I've got it. I'm totally wired that very analytical way.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the fact that you're not destined for your genes. And that's what we're seeing that now with epigenetics. Just because it's in your lineage does not mean that you have to do that. And so there's so many different analogies out there, whether or not it's, you've got the gun, it's whether or not you load the gun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all of those things, like literally every decision we make today is impacting the quality of our life 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So let's make sure we're making the right decisions. So let's just jump right into carnivore. The fact of, this might be a new concept for some people, because I know you have been talking about it, Maria's been talking about it, there's been other people talking about it, but even for me, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I started hearing about it and was like, time out, there is no way this can be healthy. I'm looking at, acid-base balance, all sorts of stuff. But then I realized really intelligent people were talking about it, and I needed to do some more research. And once I did, game over, I love it. And so let's talk about exactly what carnivore is, why you guys have even made that switch from keto to carnivore 100%. Because carnivore, for those of you that don't realize, carnivore is still keto. It's a whole nother form of it. But let's talk about health benefits. Let's go through it all.
Yeah, so let's start out with my why. And we talk about this in our book, What's Your Why? Why do you want to do carnivore? Because it can kind of change how you do it and how you approach it. If it's for chronic disease and issues, like myself, about 2.5 years ago, I got diagnosed with Lyme disease after 7 years of struggling with pain. I started researching like I do with anything. And I found some people that had done carnivore as a treatment for chronic Lyme. And one of them was Charlene Anderson, who we reached out to and talked to, but she has been doing it for 20 years, and primarily because of her chronic Lyme disease, and it's helped her manage it. And she's thriving, 20 years of, zero carb or carnivore, and she's doing great. But that's kind of what I went to it, and I started digging into the science. And first of all, I just started doing it myself. And literally some of the pain that I experienced went away within 24 to 48 hours. Like I have a migrating pain that can happen. That's common with Lyme disease, where you have joint pain that migrates from my knee to my ankle to my hip. Basically I just wake up in the morning, suddenly my ankle feels like I broke it. I mean, you can hardly walk on it. No reason. Next morning it's in my knee. And that I struggled with that for years. And within a day or two of doing strict carnivore and cutting out all plants, that was gone. And it stays gone if I stayed to carnivore. So myself, I was seeing the results. So then I dived into the science side of it. And, as we're researching and when we're writing this book that we wrote on carnivore, I started to see a lot of evidence pointing to, humans evolved to become human primarily by eating animal proteins. And so there's a whole series of studies. If you search isotopic analysis of Neanderthals or early humans, there's a ton of studies out there that what they do is they take bone collagen and they do isotopic analysis to see the nitrogen content of that collagen. What that tells you is where their protein came from. You can tell if, based on the nitrogen groups, you can tell were they primarily eating plant proteins? Were they primarily eating fish proteins? Were they primarily eating animal proteins? What was the source of their protein, and how much was that source of protein? And then what they do in these studies, which makes it really interesting, is they take other animals of that period. So they'll take a woolly mammoth bones and analyze them. They'll take a lion and analyze them. They'll take these rhinos and things that were in that time period, hyenas, and analyze them. And now you can compare how much protein, how much of this animal's protein came from animals versus this one. And we have these charts in our book where you show where they stack up on the, and the more up and to the right on the chart you go, the more apex carnivore you are. And on the chart, hyenas are here, lions are here, and above both are early humans. The early humans were on the same trophic level for sure, the same category as carnivores of that time, and even higher than the carnivores that they analyzed. So they ate primarily large herbivores like woolly mammoth, and that was where they got their protein.
Wow.
And so when you look at, and then why that's so important, you know, that's 30 to maybe 100,000 years ago when Neanderthals and early humans were around. Why that's so important is because that was when we became human, right? That's when we started using fire and we started growing these big brains. And what fueled that? Animal protein. And then if you look at our digestive tract, is kind of the next level of evidence, right? You look at us versus other primates like gorillas, apes, etc. If you look at our digestive system, there's some very different striking differences. One is the small intestine. The small intestine on humans is 2 to 3 times longer than other primates. What's the small intestine good for? Digesting animal proteins. The large bowel, that's your place where you process plant matter. That's 1/3 as long as other primates. The cecum, which is where you digest plant fibers, that's where you would ferment your cellulose or your other plant fibers and turn them into saturated fatty acids that the body can actually use. True omnivores or herbivores, they have a big cecum where all this plant material sits and ferments and turns into something they can use. Humans, it's this sort of little pouch right at the beginning of the large bowel, and it doesn't even hold anything. And that's why we can't digest fiber anymore, right? We can't ferment it because there's no cecum to have it sit and ferment in. So fiber just goes right through us. We can't even use it anymore. So these kind of evidence, it kind of points out to, okay, we prioritize protein and we deprioritize plant matter as we evolved and grew these big brains that required that nutrient-dense food to fuel that growth. And then the next step you can look at is something like stomach acid. So each group of animal fit in a specific range of stomach acid based on what they eat. Herbivores, usually it's 5 to 6. So stomach pH, 7 is neutral. Anything below 7 is acidic. And the lower you go, it's more acidic. Very lightly acidic for herbivores like deer and things that we know eat nothing but plants. About 5 to 6 stomach pH. Omnivores that eat both, about 4 to 5. Carnivores that eat nothing but primarily animal proteins are about 2 to 3. Humans are about 1.5 to 2. That's close to a hyena, which is a scavenger, at 1.5. Why do hyenas have 1.5? Because they're eating meat that's turning. So they need a really acidic stomach to deal with that turning meat, right? We're close to them. And so not only are we, in the carnivore range, we're almost to the scavenger range, which, going back to the isotopic evidence, what happens when you eat, when you kill a huge woolly mammoth, right? Think about that. A cow could feed one human for like a year. A woolly mammoth is massive, and it could feed a tribe of these early humans for months, and they don't have freezers, right? Yeah. So, they're eating meat that's turning. So it's almost, you get that stomach that has evolved to deal with that meat that has started to turn. That's our digestive system, and that's our history as humans.
That is fascinating. That's even information I knew our stomach acid and all of that, but never put 2 and 2 together that way. That is so fascinating. So then let's talk about what's, because there's so many different variations that I've heard, especially as it's become more popular, right? Some people do only steak. Other people they'll throw dairy in with it. I'm not a huge fan of dairy. A lot of people on our summit even have talked about, we more so do a keto paleo type plan, but let's talk a little bit about that and why people see results with this, because I know it's a lot of times people will use it as for testing food sensitivities too. So especially if this is a brand new topic for our viewers, maybe they should know why to even contemplate doing this for a little bit.
Yeah. So again, in the book, we decided to break this down into levels of carnivore. And level 1 is just beef and salt. That's it. So anything from a cow, could be organ meats, could be bone marrows, bone broths, and salt. The next level, you add in other proteins like poultry, pork, all the different kinds of proteins that you want to add in at that level. Level 3, we first add eggs. And then as a second part of level 3, you can try dairy, but that's the last thing you try adding back in. And then level 4 would be kind of a zero carb, where you start adding spices or other things that are zero carb sauces, like maybe mustard or something you can try, and kind of working your way through that. And this was kind of our carnivore autoimmune protocol that we came up with. So if you're doing this for chronic disease, again, back to your why are you doing this? If it's for general health and weight loss, dive right into maybe, eggs and any protein you want, and you can do great with weight loss in that way. If it's for chronic issues like Lyme disease, if it's for fibromyalgia, if it's for autoimmune disorders, if it's for bipolar disease and some of these things that we've seen amazing results with, then go right to level 1. And then it acts as a sort of ultimate elimination diet, right? All you're eating is beef and salt. So you've eliminated any possible reactionary food. And then you slowly add back in other foods, other proteins, other things to see where your tolerance level is. So you do beef and salt for like maybe 30 days, and then you start adding other things back in and see how your body reacts. If you get, water retention, bloating, and your symptoms for whatever you're trying to heal come back, skip that food, try something else, and just find what your body can handle. As far as the why, my personal belief, there's no science behind, why does carnivore eliminate plants and how does this work in the body? My personal belief is that, plants have a lot of negatives that we don't really talk about. The whole society talks about fruits and vegetables are these unlimited thing. There's no negatives to them. You eat unlimited and you'll do great. And that's not necessarily true, especially about fruit. Fruit we know is loaded with sugar, especially certain fruits, grapes, that the new cotton candy grapes that are twice the sugar of typical grapes, which are already way too much sugar to begin with. They're just a sugar bomb. It's so we know that, but veggies also don't come without any negatives, right? There's anti-nutrients, which are compounds that are in all plants, which can cause problems in the body. A lot of these compounds can cause leaky gut type issues. So they can irritate the gut and then cause leaky gut, which one of the primary causes of autoimmune is when you get leaky gut, you get things into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, food that's undigested or what have you. And so the body says, I got to attack this. And it causes an autoimmune reaction where it starts attacking that, but then also starts attacking good cells. And that's your autoimmune disorder, right? So if you back it up to what caused that leaky gut, one of the big causes is the anti-nutrients in some plants. Oxalates are a big one. Oxalates are like tiny crystals that you'll find in all nuts and seeds and leafy greens and kiwi, and a lot of different plants have these little crystals. Well, all anti-nutrients, the term anti-nutrient is basically, it's not something your body needs or wants, right? It's not a vitamin or a mineral. It's not a fat, protein, or a carbohydrate. It's something your body doesn't need or want. So it's got to detox it and get rid of it. Well, they can accumulate in the body if you eat a lot of them. Oxalates is one of them. And there's actually a toxicity level for oxalates. That like 3.5 to maybe 30 grams of oxalates in the body can kill you. Nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that if you eat green smoothies of spinach and kale loaded with oxalates and you eat 5 of those in a day, it could kill you, right?
Yeah.
So especially if and the big range that's there is due to your metabolism. If you've got diabetes and metabolic syndrome, you're going to be on the lower end of that range because your metabolism is damaged. You can't handle as much. If you're strong, then you can handle more. Strong immune system and metabolic function. So that's kind of where I look at it as the possible source of this, not only from the autoimmune side, but also chronic diseases like Lyme. Lyme disease, it depresses your immune function, right? And so that's why all these other issues kind of creep up with Lyme, like heavy metals and mold issues and parasites and all these things your immune system can normally deal with. Because Lyme has depressed the immune function, it can't deal with it anymore and they build up in the body. Well, I think the same thing happens with anti-nutrients. Your body can't get rid of them like it should. So these things accumulate in the body. They cause the joint pain, migrating pain issues. And so when you eliminate them, you allow your body to get rid of those from the system, and that can help you heal.
Yeah, and it's so huge. I think at least for me, it was so great to know exactly how my body reacted with every food, right? Even though I was eating super clean on everything and I would have, my spinach smoothies and kale and all that type of stuff, I never put two and two together as to, oh, you know what, my energy's tanking a little bit after this or whatever else, or this ache and pain. And so that was the best thing. I mean, I guess I started it probably over a year ago, but within the first week, just to start noticing changes. And after a while, when I would add in certain things to see exactly how my body would respond, I'm like, okay, not cool. We're not going to go back to using that again. So it's becoming more in tune, more aware. Some people just do it for weight loss, but again, like you see a lot of people using it for just trying to help heal their body and different things that they've been dealing with for a long time. Because I think a lot of people are starting to realize that literally food is medicine, like they said way back when. And every single cell that we have, is created from whatever we're putting in our mouth. So the fact is that we're regenerating all the time.
That's the thing is when you're eating something that you might be a little sensitive to, and you're eating it all the time, you don't really notice it because that's just your normal, right? You're a little bit inflamed, you're a little bit bloated, but that's normal. That's just how you feel, right? So when you cut that out and you feel, oh, I feel pretty good, and then you add it back in and suddenly you get that big shift and change, compared to always being there, you really notice it. And so it's a good way to kind of identify those things and find the foods that you feel best on.
Yeah. So even if somebody's been doing keto for a while, I would encourage just go and try this for a bit and see how you're doing with that. Because sometimes I think we all find a crutch within keto, and it could be maybe they're doing handfuls of almonds every single day or something like that. And that could be a trigger for you. So, check it out.
And also, one, what I would call a mistake some keto people make is they switch all their baked goods to just keto baked goods.
Oh, geez,
so you eat breads and cupcakes and all of these things made with almond flour, which guess what? Almonds are very high in oxalates. And so you end up, number one, switching one crux for another. And that can also be not great for weight loss in general, but also you're getting a lot of oxalates. So that could cause some other issues. So, we always talk about just stick with whole foods, stick with, a protein focus. Whether you're doing keto or carnivore, carnivore obviously is all protein, but animal proteins as a focus of your plate, even if you're keto, and you'll do much better.
Yep, I love that. And that's the thing. I don't think people realize how much for almond flour, how many almonds are in, when you've got a half a cup of almond flour, holy smokes, you would never sit down and eat like that bag of almonds or whatever that's, when you grind them up. And so when you put those into perspective that way, yeah, there's a reason why all of a sudden your weight loss might have stalled on keto because of what they're eating. I remember actually now all of a sudden talking with Maria about that, where people would just slam down fat bombs too, right? Remember that phase? And it was like, you don't really need to do that. Like we need to look at the macros for each person individually. Some people can get away with it. Other ones,
But even the people that can get away with it, they might lose weight for a while and then they'll stall. The thing is, you come from the standard American diet to anything else, whole food base, you're going to do well for a while because you're coming from the worst scenario for a diet to something that's whole food based. So it's better. But you're going to stall at some point if you're not doing it the right way and keeping track of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell them where they can find your information and Maria's information.
Yeah, we have lots of free information and recipes on our mariamindbodyhealth.com, our blog. And then we also have a support site for lots of different support options, packages, ebooks. That's at keto-adapted.com. And then, of course, we're on social media under Craig Emmerich or Maria Emmerich, typically.
Yeah, love it. And I will tell you, I love the cookbooks. You guys are my favorite cookbooks that I use. So,
thank you.
And there's even ones like for autoimmune protocol within, you got those without nuts and everything. So, I mean, just they're mouth watering. So
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Craig.
Thank you.